A very good evening to all parents and our Sec 1 and 2 students. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. Now, I'm teacher James, and together with me is teacher Quidim. Okay, good to have everyone here. Well, the fact that all you are here, okay, is you're already taking the very first important step, okay, to actually help yourself to start the journey of actually mastering mathematics in secondary school. Okay, so tonight our focus of today's webinar is to actually give everyone um, a comprehensive overview and an insight into what it entails when we talk about secondary mathematics, as well as some of the important aspects that I think will be helpful for you to take note of to get yourself familiar as you embark on this journey. And of course, we'll be sharing also in terms of the rigor of this subject in secondary school, um, the assessment rigor that it will be expected to undertake, as well as some of the common challenges that many students will actually encounter, and of course, how you can actually overcome them. So we'll be sharing all these things to basically help you to better prepare, to embark on secondary mathematics, as well as some tips, to help everyone here. All right. So with that, I will start off, and I would want to encourage everyone to try to make this session to be quite interactive. So feel free to ask us any question that you may have, and we're more than happy to help to clarify, any question that you may have. All right. Okay. Let me just pull up my slide here. Okay. Teacher Quinn, you can see my slide?
Yeah, can.
All right, can. Okay. So for tonight, what I will be covering together with Quidim is to give you the overview of this subject, okay? Basically mathematics in lower secondary mathematics. And beside that, actually, I will also be giving you an overview of the whole entire mathematics syllabus that you will be expected to undertake. Because after all, what you are doing in lower secondary actually builds a very important foundation, okay, to help to gear you up, for the final exam that you're going to take, right? Which is your, GCO level or GCA NA level, depending on the banding that you're in, right? Then, of course, like I mentioned earlier on, we will also be talking about some of the challenges that a lot of students face, and how we can overcome them. And finally, we'll also be sharing with you how all these things can be supported, okay? So no worries, even if it's tough, but there's a proper systematic way of learning them and to master the subject. Now, for mathematics, okay, I think since primary school until now, you will notice that actually mathematics is just like English, right? It's a very important subject, and it's actually made compulsory, right? So you don't really have a choice, and you really have to, take it, And for mathematics, is an important subject, especially so when you come to secondary school, because it's going to also determine your next step, in your learning. So after secondary school, many of you will go to post-secondary, whether it's a GSC or whether it's polytechnic. You will find that mathematics will be a key requirement in many, many of the courses that you are going to take. So doing well for math is very important, because it will actually help you open more doors for you, right? As you are given, because you do well, then you have a wider choice in terms of, the different courses which actually require math as a key requirement for admission. Okay, so that's actually one important factor. But apart from that, even within your secondary school journey, you will find that for those of you who aspire, to take additional mathematics, if you have elder sibling or or friends or cousin, you may heard of them taking additional math in Sec 3 onwards. So your result in your lower secondary will be important, okay? Because a number of school, in fact, many schools, they do based on your performance in your lower secondary for mathematics to actually determine whether they allow you to take additional math or not, okay? So of course, not just the math result, they also look holistically across your overall result as well. But of course, certainly if you must do well in your mathematics, as a key consideration for you to be able to be considered for additional math. Okay. But of course, having said this, there are also some school whereby they actually it's a default that everyone has to take additional math. There are certain selected school which like that. But of course, in general, most school will be basing on your math result in lower sec for admission to additional mathematics in upper secondary. All right. Now, for the math syllabus, okay, the current math syllabus is one that is very different, okay, from the time that I take my secondary school, okay, or maybe even some of the parents here, right? Based on the current, because the mathematics syllabus actually has been evolving over the years. So the current syllabus that your child is now undergoing is taking, um, essentially the focus is actually to help them to not just master all the different mathematical technique and the concept, but also to about developing a very critical mathematical reasoning ability to communicate, okay, what they have learned, and also to able to do modeling to solve problem. Okay, so this is actually one of the key focus of the current syllabus. Okay, so it's actually more than just simply learning the different topic or the technical details, nor to apply the steps and calculate and solve it, and that's it. Okay, it's actually more than just that. Okay, so the expectation here and the emphasis in the current syllabus uh, focuses a fair bit on able to provide mathematical reasoning. So that means the result that you have computed, you may need to actually provide the reason to justify why. Okay, or you may be asked to be able to communicate and to explain your result. I mean, getting the correct answer is not enough. You must still be able to explain the result that you have obtained. Okay, and of course, there are also the expectation that student must be able to learn how to apply to solve problem sum. Okay, and the solving of the problem sum involve modeling, involve be able to formulate the relevant mathematical model to actually help to solve the problem sum. Okay, so these are some of the key emphasis in the current math syllabus. Okay, that your child is undergoing, and the other important aspect that I would like to highlight in this current syllabus is also the expectation that student who is actually learning the mathematics, there will be questions that will require them to be able to draw the connection across different topics, okay, so that they are able to uh, be required to acquire that deeper, appreciation and understanding of mathematics to address a problem sum. Okay. For this, I can give you a simple example. Okay, just as a brief example for you all to everyone here to better appreciate what I'm trying to say here. Later on, we will be sharing a bit more. Okay. Now there will be a type of question in mathematics, what we call the real world context question. Okay. So for such question, they will typically require to able to solve it comprehensively and correctly. The student is expected to be able to know how to actually connect the different topic and apply the relevant different topic to address the question. So as just for illustration, right? So a question could be, let's say, based on let's say a person going to overseas for study. Okay, so overseas study there will incur some cost, and there will also be a need for, let's say, accommodation, right? Accommodation, and then also have cost for food and transport and so on, all the allowances. So in order to address this sort of question, using this as a context, so a student would then be required to actually apply different topics to address such question. Okay, for example, there will be a need to actually apply, topic like say percentage, topic like say interest, because there will be conversion of currency, right? So they will be must be able to apply that. And even the topic on, let's say, compound interest or simple interest, right? So they will also be required to do that as well. So this is just to give an example as to, certain question. I mean, for this type of question, there is this kind of expectation that you need to able to based on all the topic that you have learned, right? You have to know which are the relevant topic that you can use to apply and must apply appropriately, okay, to address that problem sum. And that is where the connection across different topic, comes in, okay. So this is just an example of a context to let everyone understand what we mean by this type of question. Okay, it's called the real world context question, which later on we will actually have some example to further elaborate on this and to let everyone understand a bit better. Okay. Now, having said that, I just want to give everyone, all parents here and students, a good overview as to the content that you will be covering in your whole journey of your secondary mathematics, okay, until you take that final national exam, okay. So the content that you'll be learning across these 4 years or 5 years, okay, depending on whether you're in the banding of G3 or G2, the content are actually broadly classified into these three categories, the topic, namely your numbers and algebra, your geometry and measurement, and this topic on statistic and probability. Okay, so across these three content, that means all the different topic and the technical details that you are expected to learn and to master, okay, and the concept that you need to know. There's also this what we call the mathematical processes. Okay, so this mathematical processes is just cutting across all these three technical content. Okay, and this is where I was sharing earlier on. Okay, which is the processes of mathematical reasoning to be able to communicate your result and apply in different contexts. Okay, so whatever mastery that you have in that particular topic is not enough. You must be able to apply in different contexts. So question can be provided in varied contexts, but you must still be able to know how to apply the mathematical concept appropriately to the question. Okay, so this is what we mean by the process strength. Okay, so broadly speaking, this is how the current math syllabus is being organized. Okay, three key content strength and then one process strength that is cutting across. So meaning to say, for each of the three category of topic that you are encountering, you will be encountering this expectation, the way the demand of the mathematics question, right? There'll be some that is involve reasoning, to be able to apply in different contexts, okay, as well as the formulation. So next, I will want to share with everyone here a bit more detail exactly what is each of these content strength covered, the different topic that is being covered. So on my slide here, you can see that this is a summary of the key topics, okay, that your child will be learning. So under numbers and algebra, you will see that this one got the most number of topic under this current this particular strand. Okay, then followed by geometry and measurement. Okay, and finally it will be your probability and statistic. Okay, so these are the different topics that is being covered. And if you talk about the weightage wise in terms of let's say for the whole exam, right? Your paper one and paper two, you will also see that actually the number of topics here in a way also provide that indication. So actually it's true that there is a slightly higher weightage in terms of the number of the marks allocated for each of the three strands, okay, which is in a way proportional to the number of topics over here. Okay, so number and algebra tend to have slightly higher weightage as in terms of the overall percentage of the marks that is taking out across both paper one and paper two. Okay. Now, these are all the topics that I summarized here are the topics that you will be learning, that your child will be learning across the 4 years. Okay. So from set 1 to set 4, okay, they will be learning all these topics. So each of these topics, the expectation here is they will not be learning the topic in 1 year. Okay. In fact, they will be learning this across a few years. So the way to master each of these topics is by adopting so the syllabus is such that it is more like a staggered approach. Okay, so they will learn some aspect of it in the first year in set 1, and then they continue to learn that topic in set 2, right? So in the next slide, you will actually see what I mean by that. So different topics, you can see that actually the coverage is a bit different. So like for some topic, you can see that, like for example, your ratio and your proportion, right? This topic, it's not that heavy a topic. So in a way, over 2 years, Sec 1 and Sec 2, you will learn everything, okay, for this topic. But for other topic, like for example, if you can see your equation and inequalities, you can see that this one actually straddled across Sec 1, Sec 2 to until Sec 3, okay? Then you would have considered as fully um, learn all that you need to learn for this topic, under your syllabus. Okay, so this one to give you everyone a good overview as to how your learning of each of the topic will be going to be like. Okay. Now, of course, you can also see that there are some topic that's more advanced, so it will actually start only in the later year. Okay, so there are some topic, like your properties of circle, for example, you can see that actually this one, you only start learning only when you're in Sec 3. Okay, so in the lower side, you won't learn that. Okay, likewise, for some other topic, like vectors and so on, you will be learning only in Sec 4. Okay, so this is how your learning of the different topic is being spread across the different years. Okay, so this is for those who are taking G3 mathematics. Okay, so this is how it's been distributed across the 4 years. Now, just for the benefit of students who are in the G2 band, okay, so the coverage is also more or less similar, okay, in terms of the scope of the coverage, but you can see that the spread of the topic is across the 5 years. Okay, so this is how they are being distributed across the year, but it's more or less similar to G3, except that maybe for certain topic, it provide a slightly longer runway, a slightly longer duration for the mastery of that particular topic. Okay, so this will give you a good overview and idea as to how these are being distributed across the different topics. Now, of course, from the slide here, you can see that within each year, they'll be learning that particular topic and then followed by, let's say, second year, right? But if you want to know even more details as to what you'll be learning for each of the year, say Sec 1 or Sec 2 and so on. Okay, over my slide, this slide here, you can see that detailed breakdown. Okay, so for each of the topic in the first year, for example, Sec 1, these are the breakdown of what you'll be learning. So there's a lot more details to it. Okay, and of course, your school textbook will be actually be following very closely and aligned to this requirement in terms of the scope wise. Okay, so this information actually you can easily find this in the SEAB website. Okay, so it's not very transparent. If you want to know ahead, like what you're going to be learning in Sec 2 or Sec 3, and the expectation, actually you can actually go to SEAB website and you can actually download and get this piece of information. Okay, so on my screen here, I think the word may be a little bit small, but no worry. Okay, for the details, why you can actually go to SEAB website. But basically just to let you understand that within each of the topic, actually there's quite a lot of detail that you'll be learning. So that's why you need to really, the syllabus is designed such that it's being spread across different years, so that you progressively gain the mastery and to learning well. Okay, so especially for many of you here, when you are now in Sec 1 and Sec 2, okay, in the lower secondary, okay, I always say this to my students, right? This is really like your golden years, okay, because this is the time whereby you have the opportunity to build a very good and strong foundation, if you learn all these things well, okay, to set yourself up, for your upper secondary. All right. Because I've seen a lot of cases whereby, for students in the upper secondary, because their earlier years, they did not really master the lower secondary concept well. So they kind of snowball, this little problem that they have. So when they go to upper secondary, they find that they struggle. Okay. And Sec 3 will have other new topic that they'll be learning. At the same time, they still have to grapple with some of the weak foundation that they have in the earlier topic. And then they have to revisit those. So you'll find that actually you get yourself into a very tricky situation, whereby you become very stressful, right? While you're trying to cope with a new thing. But some of the new topic, in a way, is also based on the earlier concept. So therefore, I always tell my students that, when you're in the lower side, this is the best time for you to, learn them well, And when things are still not too difficult, the concepts are still not too difficult, pay attention to actually learn them well. Okay, so that this will be actually be very helpful for you, later on. Okay, now the next part that I would like to share with all parents here is in terms of the assessment, right? Having have a better idea now, in terms of this is the scope of the topic, that your child will be going through and expected to cover across their secondary school journey, okay, for the mathematics. Okay, so for those who are taking the G3 mathematics, okay, this will be the O-level exam, broad overview of what it will entails. Okay, of course, I know now there's a change of name, right? Now they call this Singapore examination cert, right? Eventually, it will not call the GC O-level cert. Okay, it will call the SEC, right? But at the point in time, I think there's no further, this is a more name change until there's new information given by MOE. Otherwise, it will be based on this examination format, okay, which you'll be taking. Okay, so you have consists of paper 1 and paper 2. Okay, so each paper is 2 hours 15 minutes. Okay, equal weightage. Okay, there's no difference between paper 1 and paper 2. Okay, so total is 90 marks. Okay, and similar to what you have done previously in your last national exam. Okay, your last national exam was your PSLE, right? So you'll notice that paper 1 usually are those short questions. So it's the same. So in secondary school, you'll find that your paper 1 is also consider all the shorter questions. Okay, just that the weightage is the same for both paper. And of course, there's something different. Is that you notice the duration is not much longer, right? Each paper is 2 hours 15 minutes. So that means it requires all students to be able to have that mental stamina to last through the 2 hours or 15 minutes of full concentration of solving problem sum. Okay, so that is something that you need to build up in terms of the mental resilience, okay, over the years, okay, to have that concentration for this duration of time to solve all the different challenging questions that you may encounter in the paper. Okay, so this is the format and the rigor of what you'll be expecting to sit at the end of your this math journey after you complete, go for your final exam. All right. So paper 1 typically is about 26, short question. Okay. And this question here, while they are short, actually in terms of level of difficulty, it also varies. So later I'll explain a little bit more in terms of what we mean by the different level of difficulty of the question. So similarly, when it comes to paper 2, now paper 2, these are the longer question. Okay, so the marks per question is also more, right? So it's typically about 9 to 10 questions, but the marks will be more than, per question you carry more marks. Now, even though these are longer questions, but in terms of level of difficulty, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the long questions are the challenging question. Okay, so the length of the question doesn't determine the level of difficulty. So later on, I will explain a bit more and what do we mean by that, okay, in terms of how questions are being set and the level of difficulty. Actually, that's a way we categorize them. Okay, so I will explain that to everyone so that all parents can understand that a bit better and to help you in supporting your child. Okay, so that is on the assessment part. Okay, as far as the exam is concerned. Now, maybe at this point, I will also just to share for benefit for any student who are actually on the taking the G2 math. Okay, so this exam format that I just shared is slightly different for the case of the G2, because for G2, the exam format that we'll be taking for this, I mean, on the SEAB website, actually you can find this as well. Okay, so the equivalent of that will be the NA level mathematics. So for that, right, similarly, they also have two paper 1 and paper 2. Okay, but the duration is 2 hours each. Okay, so each paper is 2 hours. Okay, and the total mark is 70 marks. Okay, but weighted is still the same. Both paper 1 are equally weighted. So 50% for paper 1 and 50% for paper 2. But it's just that the total mark is 70 marks for paper 1 and 70 marks for paper 2. Okay, so that is for those who are taking G2. Okay, when you take the national exam. Okay, okay, so that is on the assessment. Now, this is the next slide is what I want to share a little bit more to let everyone understand in terms of the assessment rigor. So like I mentioned earlier on, be it paper one or be it paper two, right? There will be question that is of different level of difficulty. So how the question are being designed is we call this like AO1, AO2, and AO3. Okay, so this is how the question are being categorized. So for the AO1 question, this will be typically those questions that is the more straightforward question. Okay, that is so long as you learn your basic, okay, you do a due diligence in learning the technique well and the concept well, you should be able to do this kind of question, okay, which involve the more routine kind of procedure, okay. So you should, most students will be able to handle this well, okay, if they actually don't do their due diligence of learning and practicing the the method, and the step to do the calculation and computation, okay. So these are the type of question that is what we call the AO1 question. Now, AO1 question, it can actually appear in both paper one and paper two. So that not necessarily mean that it has to be only paper one. Then everything in paper one is AO1. Not that way. Doesn't mean that AO1, not doesn't mean that paper one, because it's a short question. So that means everything is all this kind of straightforward. Not necessarily. Okay. Now, the next category will be what we call the AO2 kind of question. This will be the question that is what we call application question. Okay. So the expectation here is that not only do you expected to master the technique, the the concept, the step to calculate very well, but you must be able to use it in different contexts. So the question can provide different context, very varied context, different, but you're expected to know how to still apply the relevant concept and method to solve the problem. Okay, so this what we call the AO2 question. Okay, so a lot of time it does require students to be able to do some formulation, formulate the problem into some mathematical terms, able to analyze and determine what is the relevant information, all right, and to also interpret the result. Okay, so these are some of the ways, different way that they can test you, okay, under the application type of question. And finally, of course, the more challenging question will be your AO3 question. Okay, this will be the question that not only require you to know how to apply them in different contexts, but you must be able to provide your mathematical reasoning, okay, or to justify a certain mathematical result or statement. All right, and to also be able to provide a mathematical explanation, okay, in the context of the given question. All right, so these are some of the more challenging question that actually most students encounter, that usually students, they don't really enjoy the AO3 question, because it's more demanding, right? Not only you must know how to compute and calculate, you may even need to compare and to justify your result. Okay, so this is the how we classify the different category of the question. Now, the next part that I would want to share is to let you understand how this type of question, the three category of level of difficulty, how are they actually distributed? Okay, like what percentage of the paper you can expect to be AO1, AO2, or AO3? Okay, so this slide here will give you that overview. Okay, so I should summarize it for everyone to easy for everyone to understand. So if you are taking the O level, GC O levels, maybe those in the G3 band. Okay. Now your paper will actually have AO1 question. Okay. More or less constitute about 45%. Now 45% of those questions will come from the AO1 category. Okay. So slightly lesser will be your AO2. So basically your AO1 and AO2, the number of questions is more or less about the same, except the AO1 is slightly more, okay, with question from AO1. And finally, you can expect about 15% of the question will be the AO3 type, okay? That is the more challenging question, okay? So this is how you can expect for those who are in G3. Now, for those who are in G2, the expectation is slightly different. You will still get these three categories of questions. You still get your AO1, AO2, and AO3 type of question. Okay, but the percentage distribution is a bit different from those taking G3. So for G2, AO1 will take up about 60%, followed by 30% that come from your AO2 type of question, and finally AO3 question will be about 10%. Okay, so you will still get your own fair share of the challenging question as well. Okay, so this is how it's been differentiated. So I just summarize this slide here for the benefit of everyone. Okay, whether you're in G2 or G3, I hope this provide you with some helpful information, as you learn and study and prepare for your learning journey in mathematics. All right, so I hope you can actually take note of this. Now, with this, I will actually before we go on to I was going to stop here. So the next part of what we will be covering for tonight will be to address some of those common challenges that students tend to face. Okay, so there are some key challenges that we have seen, that majority of students they encounter. So later, as teacher William go through that with you, you will be able to see that it's something that is not too unfamiliar to you, right? Many of students actually, maybe since primary school, they may actually have some of this issue. Okay, so actually it's good to be aware now that you are going into sec 1 and sec 2 lower sec. So it's a new learning journey in in the secondary. So it's good to try to try to address all these issue, so that you do not continue to have these some of these common challenges, and some of this actually is boiled down to some habits. Okay, yeah. So I will pass over to teacher Quilin, and then he will share a bit more with you. All right.
Okay, thank you, Teacher James.
Okay, I will stop share.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen first. Okay. Okay, yeah. So as you can see on my screen is that, the common challenges of Sec 1 and Sec 2 students would be some of these that I've listed down over here, which is in terms of the time management, careless mistakes, and presentation of workings and units, and also in terms of the accuracy of answers. Okay, I'll be going into more details of each of these in the next few slides. Okay, so let's take a look at this first one. Okay, so for time management. Okay, so many times I've actually also noticed this is that many students get carried away with when they are encountered with challenging questions. So when they actually get a question that is challenging, they will just be focusing and like getting stuck with that, and they will not move on. So that is a very problematic issue, where because if that is the case, then they will actually end up losing time for the subsequent questions that they ought to be doing. Okay, so one thing is one good suggestion is that do not get carried away with these challenging questions. If they happen to actually find that a certain question they are not able to do, they ought to actually move on to another question, finish up whatever that they need, and then come back later, and then to work on the ones that are challenging. Okay, and another thing is that for time allocation. So how much time do we actually allocate in terms of like let's say for a certain question, let's say is 4 marks, for example. How much time do we actually allocate to that question? Or maybe a question that is just 1 mark. How much time do we actually allocate? Okay, that this with a rough gauge of this is that we would try to allocate about 1.5 minutes for every 1 mark. So let's say, as I mentioned, if it's a 4-mark question, they should be actually allocating about 6 minutes for that question. And if they are actually using too much time, then they will actually find that they have not enough time to finish the rest of the questions. And then also another thing is that for graph questions, usually these are the low-hanging fruits. If with sufficient practice, usually graph plotting questions are very routine. And these are the ones that for sure they have to score it. So do not put them at the last, because usually when it comes to the paper, they tend to actually be placed further to the back in that sense. In terms of what we notice also is that usually it's the last few questions, but wherever possible, try and get that graph question done first. Then after that, then move on to the other questions, right? Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is actually on careless mistakes. Okay, so the first one is actually on clear presentation. When there's clear presentation that is written in your workings, in their workings, this will actually minimize mistakes. And also another thing is that if the time is actually managed well, then they will have enough time to actually check back on their working and make sure that they not actually commit certain careless mistakes, and or maybe to correct their careless mistakes that they have may have done earlier. Okay, and another thing is that during practices, it is actually good to have this habit of compiling those careless mistakes. Let's say they do some peer marking, and what happens is that the classmate or their friend actually spotted a certain mistake for them. Then that's where they can actually compile them and ensure that, okay, subsequent time when they encounter similar question, they shouldn't be actually doing that same old mistakes again, right? Okay, then the next one is on presentation. Okay, so let's take a look at this question here. Okay, it's actually a pie chart with the angles of some of these brands that are actually shown here. Apple brand is 220 degrees, and this others is 15 degrees. So the question is actually saying that if 123 students like Apple more than others, find the number of students who like Apple. Okay, and the student actually came up with this working that is on your right side that you can see. It's just first is to find the difference in the degrees, which is 205 degrees. Then subsequently, the student actually wrote 205 degrees equals to 123. And then 1 degree is equals to 0.6, and 220 degrees is equals to 132. Okay, this is a very typical primary school way of writing. And in fact, primary school, I would say most teachers would actually say that, would emphasize this, is that for this degree part, especially, let me just try and get this annotated. Okay, so if you were to look at this part here, okay, especially this statement over here, this statement over here, and this one, actually, these three, in fact, you'll notice that it is given with 205 degrees equals to 123 and so on. 205 degrees is not equals to 123, okay? Because this first thing is that 205 is an angle. 205 degrees is an angle. But the value of 123 is actually talking about the number of students. So how can they be equal, right? In terms of value itself, it is also not equal already, right? So in fact, in primary school, what they were taught is actually to put an arrow to indicate that, oh, this represents this amount and so on, right? But in secondary school, this is also not the correct presentation. Okay, so let me just clear this doubt first. Is that when in secondary school, the way to actually do this is, in fact, is supposed to be something like this, where you have to actually first write out the statement, like number of students who liked Apple brand, right? And that is equals to, for this case, okay, maybe we have the first step that is 220 minus 15 degrees equals to 205 degrees. This one we can keep it, but we will have to use this method of showing this working of 123 multiplied by 220 over 205. And then this actually gives me 132. Okay, which is actually the number of students. So this, in terms of this, this should be the kind of presentation that they are expected. Okay, and not what was shown in this by the student. Okay, right. So yeah, so this is actually on the presentation, and also in terms of units as well, is that they tend to actually also sometimes forget about writing the units. That is actually also very crucial. If they miss out the units, that will actually cause them to lose marks as well. Okay, right. So let's go to the next one, which is on accuracy. Okay, so this is actually what we would normally see in an exam cover page, where they say that the use of an approved scientific calculator is expected where appropriate. And then if the degree of accuracy is not specified in the question, and if the answer is not exact, give the answer in 3 significant figures, and give answers in degrees to 1 decimal place. And for pi, use either your calculator value or 3.142. Okay, so when we talk about this, is that when the question actually if it's actually specified that, oh, you have to actually write in exact form, of course, we will have to actually answer it in terms of like mixed numbers, or in a decimal, but like a certain number of decimal places. Okay, let's say if you use a calculator and then it comes out to be something like 6.125, for example. And if we were to consider this is actually 4 significant figures. But because the calculator value doesn't form a string of digits that never ends in that sense, we will actually just keep it to that as the exact answer. And it's only when when the question actually never specify any degree of accuracy, that's when we will assume that we will leave our answer in 3 significant figures, right? And except with the exception of, for angles, it will be 1 degree, 1 decimal place. And for money, that will be in 2 decimal places, right? Okay, and for the next one on accuracy, okay, if the case is a bit different this time around, if it's actually in the case that there is a certain accuracy that that is specified. Okay, so let's just quickly look at this statement over here, which is actually found in the syllabus document first. So give non-exact numerical answers correct to 3 significant figures or 1 decimal place in the case of angles in degrees, unless a different level of accuracy is specified in the question. Okay, and in questions which explicitly require an answer to be shown to be correct to a specific accuracy, the answer must be first shown to a higher degree of accuracy. So as mentioned here is that if the question actually specify a certain accuracy, like for example, if it just simply just say that, oh, correct your answer to 3 significant figures, or if a certain other kind of accuracy that is specified by the question otherwise, then we will have to leave it as, okay, for non-exact answers, we will actually have to leave it as 5 significant figures. But when we actually show, let's say while doing the working, there is an intermediate answer where we will need this intermediate answer to be used for the subsequent step and so on. Then we will have to make sure that we show it in 5 significant figures first, right? And then subsequently rounding it up to 3 significant figures, right? This is something that many students actually will neglect on this, and they tend to actually just straight away just round off to three significant figures, which actually may affect their accuracy eventually. Okay, so and however, for intermediate answers, for degrees, remember is that degrees will be rounded up to 1 decimal place. So which means for intermediate answers in degrees for angles, that will be in 3 decimal places, and for money, it will be 4 decimal places. Then subsequently round off to, for money, of course, is round off to 2 decimal place later on. Okay, yeah. So this is actually for accuracy. Okay, and then next thing is we will actually be talking about the our math curriculum, our MindStretchers math curriculum. So the objective of our curriculum is to firstly is to consolidate their learning by having these few things like the revision papers, mid-year checkpoint, end-of-year checkpoint. Okay, and also to provide them a head start for the first 2 chapters that we will actually be teaching, that we actually taught from November to December. But that is actually, we are talking about Sec 2 onwards, right? For Sec 1, of course, is after they receive the PSLE, then they will enter in January. Okay, so, and then also, third thing is that to complete the syllabus before the school's end of year exams, is usually completed at least 2 weeks before the September holidays, so that they have some time to do some corrections and so on, which I will actually be talking about this in a bit more in the, yeah, so is that we will actually be looking at this in more details in terms of what we will actually be doing in order to get these objectives done. Okay, right. So the next one is, as you can see here, these are the coverage of the topics that are for Sec 1. These topics are actually following closely to the textbooks that are available in the market, and also which is actually what they are learning in school as well, right? So the schools actually make use of that certain few textbooks, like from SL publication, or what's the other one? Marshall Cavendish and something else, right? So there is actually a few that they would use, and they are actually very in line. I mean, our curriculum is actually very in line to what they have, and also in line to what the school usually will teach in for Sec 1, and same thing for Sec 2 as well. Okay, so these are some of the topics that will be covered, right, for Sec 2, right? So which actually covers in that three content strands that teacher James actually mentioned about as well. Okay, and then for the next one is that these are the key features which I was actually talking about to cover, I mean, to fulfill our objectives, right? So the first thing is that what I mean is that I will go through all these in more details in the next few slides. So the first one is actually on concept and practice paper that we will actually cover for each chapter, and then homework booster that is will be in place in all the worksheets. For each week's worksheet, we will actually have a homework booster as well. And then upon finishing about 2 to 3 chapters, we will usually have a revision paper that to try and consolidate the students' learning, right? And then after that, we will also have the mid-year checkpoint and the end-of-year checkpoint. And on top of that is that at certain junctures, we will also provide topic summary for the students for their revision, and also to prepare for the exams and so on, right? And also there will be an error analysis that is after the mid-year and end-of-year checkpoint to try and find out where they have gone wrong. Okay, so we will go into this in more details. So concept and practice paper. Okay, so for the concept and practice paper is that there will be work examples, and these are in a spiral approach, which this, what I mean by spiral approach in learning and testing is that it involves revisiting certain key concepts, and we will repeat it with subsequently with increased difficulty or in depth or in terms of complexity, and also maybe in different applications as well. Like not just the in terms of just the mathematical calculations and getting to solve the question, but applying it into maybe a scenario which is more like a real world kind of context kind of thing, right? And then also scaffolded learning. So we will actually provide scaffolded learning with concise notes, and also to help with helpful guiding pointers, so that they can actually learn gradually and improve gradually as well. Okay, and then practice paper, they are actually tiered there are actually 3 tiers of this practice, which is the basic practice, intermediate practice, and advanced practice. So of course, the basic practice will be the very basic ones, where they need to get their fundamentals right first, then subsequently to work on the intermediate questions, which will have slightly more difficulty, but it's still rather manageable for most. And then for the advanced practice is to challenge them, to get them to think a bit more deeper, and to see how they can actually solve these kind of questions. Okay, and also on top of that is that we also have video solutions for all these, where it's actually provided in the eStudy Buddy, right? Okay, and then homework boosters. So for homework boosters, these are actually supplementary materials for the students to do their self-practice. And this is also to encourage their independent learning. And there are also video solutions of these that are provided in the eStudy Buddy. So they can actually, after they attempt those questions, they can actually check through those solutions in the online as well. Okay, and next is this part on O-level simulated practice. Okay, so on top of the 3-tier practices that I've just mentioned, we also will include some questions that are given in such a way where it's shown as O-level simulated practice. So what do we mean by that is that these questions are somewhat the same kind of questions that they will see appearing in the actual O-levels itself. And so it's actually to get them exposed to these kind of questions first, and enable them to be more prepared when it comes for the exams, when it comes for the O-levels as well, which is subsequently known as the SEC, right? So, and the next thing is that, which is actually what teacher James also mentioned earlier, which is the problems in real world context. Okay, so this is something that is a very important part where where students actually tend to have issues with this, and there are many times they will actually avoid these questions because they find that, oh, they are not able to relate to this. Okay, so these questions are usually problem-based questions that are related to the real context, where, for example, like in everyday life, things like traveling, excursion plans, transport schedules, sports, maybe it's on sports and games, or it could be a certain recipe, like how much sugar do we need, how much of this other ingredient that we need, and so on, that kind of things. Or it could be things like floor plan or navigation related. Okay, and or it could also involve things like personal and household finances, like simple and compound interest, taxation, installments, utility bills, and money exchange, and etc. Okay, so the important thing is how do they actually interpret and analyze these data from the tables and graphs, including distance time graph and also speed time graphs. Okay, and another thing is that they will actually need to know how to interpret the solution in the context of the problem. So they cannot just be interpreting it and writing out a solution that is not related, that has no relation to the problem, the context of the problem, right? And then also another thing is that identifying the assumptions that are made and the limitations of the solution. Okay, so there will be times where they may actually give you a certain scenario, but the thing is that there might be certain assumptions that have to be made in order to get to that solution. So these are some things which they need to be able to identify, right? And at GCE level, the questions on problems in real world context would actually be tested in both paper 1 and paper 2. So what we are actually doing is that we will, in Sec 1 and Sec 2, the students will actually be introduced to questions on in real world context kind of questions already. Okay, so in school as well, they will actually be starting to expose them to that as well. Okay, and these are some examples of what we mean by real world context practice. Okay, so like for example, on the left hand side, this question is actually involving a computer shop offering discounts to customers who pay $30 to become a member. So like for certain items, what kind of discounts they will be receiving and so on. And they are to actually, based on the questions, they will have to actually solve accordingly. Or maybe like the right-hand side, this question, which is actually relating to something that they may have actually enjoyed when they are younger, or maybe at this age as well. So is that going to a water theme park and then talking about the slide, the water theme park slide, and there's actually this cross section of the slide where they are to actually measure the dimensions and so on, or the area or the volume and so on, right? So these are actually just some examples of some kind of real world context questions that they may encounter, right? Okay, so revision papers, the next one is that we will give periodical revision papers to them so that they have sufficient practice and also to consolidate their learning after every few chapters. So that they have more, they are more in tune to getting ready for the assessments, like for the mid-year checkpoint and the end-of-year checkpoint, right? So the questions in the revision papers are usually exam type questions, and with this more practice and exposure, it will actually help them to get these concepts better absorbed. I mean, as in they will be able to absorb these concepts better and be able to actually do better and subsequently, right? Okay. Then next one is on this mid-year and end-of-year checkpoint. So there will be regular and periodic assessment, which is to consolidate their learning, as I mentioned, through these assessments. And this is actually to prepare them for the school examination. Okay, so what we do is our mid-year and end-of-year checkpoint is usually at least 3 to 4 weeks before their actual exams are in school. So it's actually to prepare them and have an early identification of which are the areas that they need to improve on, and also to actually simulate an exam condition so that they are more prepared for the actual exams, right? Okay, and subsequently, after doing the end of year and the mid-year and end of year checkpoint, we actually have this error analysis where we will identify the areas and opportunities, help the students to identify the areas and opportunities for improvement. So it is also to consolidate their learning after the assessment and analyze where is it that they have gone wrong, right? And then how can they actually improve on these mistakes, improve on these and also not to commit these mistakes in that sense, right? Okay, so as in summary, to embrace secondary mathematics is not really that difficult if they were to follow through these things that we have actually mentioned, right? So first of all is that model drawing is no longer applicable. So whatever they have learned in primary school in terms of model drawing, that will not be applicable in secondary school at all already. So they should not be using that method at all, right? And algebra will be essential, or I can say is very, very important, right? Okay, and another thing is that application to real life situation, which is like the problems in real world context. These are the kinds of questions that will appear more and more often. And this conceptual topical mastery to integrated topics mastery, which is actually something like what teacher James have mentioned about the 3 concept strands, and then we have this that is integrated with what was that called? Let me just have a quick check again. That word, yes, it's the process strand. Yeah. Okay, so that is actually what they are actually going through. And then also another thing is that emphasis on the presentation. That means it is very important that they need to show the work solution clearly, and no longer they are allowed to actually just show the numbers, like let's say, for example, just now, like what is shown in the example, the degrees, then after equals to the number and so on. That is not a proper presentation at all, right? And then number 6 is success or failure in PSLE has virtually no bearing on the success or failure in secondary school, right? So which means that if they have not really done too well, doesn't matter, okay? Because in secondary school, it is a whole new game altogether, right? They have to actually work on making sure that they are able to actually get through this time round and get through the O levels so that they can actually move on to the next stage of life, right? Okay, so of course, lastly, consistent practice is definitely the key to success, right? So yeah, that is all that I have. Are there any questions? Or Teacher James, do you have anything that you want to add on?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Teacher Kudim. Yeah. So, all parents and students, I hope today's session have provided you with a better understanding as to what you can expect, as you journey through in learning mathematics in secondary school. Okay. And hopefully this also help parents to be able to better, have a good idea to help to support your child, in the learning journey. So it's really very true that whatever result that you have obtained in your PSLE, actually it really has not much bearing, in terms of how you perform in secondary school. We have seen many students who actually may not necessarily have done very well in primary school, PSLE. It could be average or some even didn't do well. But through proper learning, picking all the good habits of presentation and learning things well and consistent practice, actually we have seen many of such students who in the end they excel. They excel in their national exam when they come to at the end of their 4-year or 5-year journey. So this is something that we have seen many of such success cases. So we really hope that through this sharing, I know it helps to allow everyone to have that clear understanding of what to expect as well as what to actually look out for. Okay. So yeah, if there's any question that anyone of you have, pertaining to what we have shared today or anything that you have encountered, with your child on learning mathematics, yeah, feel free to let us know. Yeah, we'll be happy to use this session to help to answer some of the query that you may have. Okay, you can type into the chat. If you prefer, we can actually answer that as well. Any question, anyone? Okay, I think earlier on, we shared a bit about the part on some of the um, typical issue that a lot of students face in secondary school. I just wanted to add on one point here is that the part about presentation of your solution. I just want to emphasize that, really in secondary school, the expectation of providing a clear, well-presented answer is actually something that examiner look out for, and they're quite particular with that. Unlike in primary school, so long as you provide a sound, correct working, valid working, they tend not to be too particular, with the way you present, so long as it is sound and it's a correct method, that is the main thing. But when it comes to secondary school, you'll find that it's a lot different. Not only you can provide the correct method and working, a lot of students they actually get penalized. They lose unnecessary marks because of the way they present. So those examples that we shared earlier on are just some of it. Okay. Why I want to emphasize on this is that this expectation. Can you give an example here to another example to illustrate? Like for example, in question on let's say angle and geometry, right? A lot of times the student will be expected to know how to apply the concept and then to compute the relevant angle, and they get the answer. Okay, but in secondary school, there's an added expectation of how you present and communicate your solution. So you will need to actually provide some supporting, justifying reason. So for example, this particular angle that you have computed, you got it correct. Okay. But you also need to actually put down the reason. So for example, this one because it's an isosceles triangle, for example. So therefore, I know this angle. Okay, the base angle of isosceles triangle. So you need to actually write down as part of your solution, the working step, the supporting reason as well. This is expected in secondary school. Something that students, especially when you're now in lower sec, it's good to actually pick up all this habit and pay attention to all these things. Because in primary school, you don't write is fine. Okay, so long as you can get the answer correct, is okay. Okay, you get the marks. But in secondary school, you will get marks penalized. Okay, if you do not provide some of these relevant, supporting reason. So this is actually where the emphasis on communication comes in. Right, you must be able to communicate your result, your working clearly, and accurately. All right. So that's something that I want to add on to what we talked about earlier on. Okay. Yeah. So anyone has any other question? Feel free to just let us know. Okay. Um, Let me check any question from the chat. Okay. If there's no question from everyone, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. Okay, and I hope this session has been helpful for everyone for you to have a better insight, into learning secondary school mathematics. Okay. So, but feel free to reach out to us. Okay? If any point in time you have any things to clarify or anything, you can always reach out to us. All right. So if not, then I will not take up everyone's time tonight. And thank you very, very much for all the everyone for taking the time to participate. Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. Good night.